Hallo, hallo. No, the sound works. Okay. Well, welcome to Tetem. We just did an introduction round, so that's all set. We're together. We already did an introduction for Gathering Open Science hardware, and I'm going to start off with talking a bit about what Tetem is, what we do, and then I will be followed up. So Tetem is a digital. It's a media. We're a media platform, and for digital culture. So on the one hand, we are like a cultural organization, and we help artists and makers to develop their own skills, like in making, in the artistic skills, but also like in their skills of how to use technology for your artistic work. And on the other hand, we think it's very important to make like the technologies and make labs accessible to everyone in the whole region, from children until people who are older. Everyone who wants to learn something about how to work with those kind of technologies should be able to do that. And we focus on the whole region of Twente. And we have like different strategies, different activities, different places, how we want to fulfill that mission. Well, we will visit the Fab Lab later today. So we have a Fab Lab. It's the lab is open on working days through the whole week, and for like professional artists, professional makers, but also like enthusiastic amateurs like me. And we have like a lot of high-end technology in the lab that you can use, and there's always a coach available who can coach you to help experiment with those new technologies. And that's where we also work together with a lot of artists and makers. For example, we have the Nexus Week, and that's really, it's a week that is completely focused on the development and artistic development of makers. So for example, Katarina and Dr. Yu Zhang were here a few weeks ago, and they had like a week where they tested out new technologies. They were helped, and at the end of the week they actually made like a few steps in their progress. And we also have a program that's a bit more into depth and a bit longer, which is Caustic, and it also always works towards like a presentation point. So we have two festivals in the year. That's the Maker Festival Twente and the Syndicate Twente. And right now Jona is working on an interactive game where children, I am blue, my neighbor is green, and you have to mix, and then you get a new color, and you have to really work together. So he has developed that game here, and he will show that at Syndicate later this year. And the same is for Avatopia by Roos Groothuizen. She already finished, and this installation went through all of Twente, so it was placed in all the municipalities. And this really helps artists like experiment with new technologies, but also like making a final product and getting it accessible to the whole region. And we also focus on like a weekend activities. So we have a Maak Mee Lab, which is also and the Instap workshops, which are also taking place here, and it's for children from the age of 4 or 6 or 8. But of course, adults can also join in because you're never too old to learn. It's usually based, you sign up for a specific workshop. For example, April was coding month, and then you sign up for programming a robot, or May was making month, and then you sign up for the chocolate printer, 3D printer. And then you really get to learn like, okay, what kind of technologies, how does this work, and you specifically learn how it works. And then we also, what I already told you, we also want to think it's very important to not only get it here, because in a lot of bigger cities in the Netherlands, there are already labs that are open access where you can use basic equipment like 3D printers that are open accessible. And we really wanted to bring it into the region, also to like smaller villages, smaller places, so that people can really use this equipment in local communities. So a few years ago we started with placing basis labs, so labs with like the basic technology that we think should be in a lab, with placing those in different municipalities. And right now we're at the point that we have a lab in every in a library in every municipality of Twente. So the local communities all have like a local lab. And they can choose themselves how they use it, when they use it. Their own staff teaches the people who come in and organize the activities. They don't have to do it all by themselves. For example, if something is broken, they can bring it here and we fix it. Or the staff and volunteers from the local community can come here and learn how the technologies work. So we teach them so that they can teach others. And so the lab is part of our lab and research team. There's like a team who works on the lab, and they also work on research. And I wanted to just show something like one of the research things that we do. So we're part of the Public Spaces network platform, which is like a platform for making internet more accessible, more transparent. And as a part of being a part of the Public Spaces platform, for example, we went from X to Mastodon because Mastodon is a more transparent platform than X. So we did that, and we also joined the Public Spaces conference, which was really fun. So that's what we also do, like like as a research part of the lab. So that's basically in short, really quick, how we try to make like the lab and equipment more accessible to the whole region, and also give makers the opportunity to really develop their skills. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Support for the development. So the Nexus and Crossfix, sorry.
This one, yeah.
Is there like some application that you have to apply to, or is it like just enroll, or is it free?
Yeah, Crossfix works with open calls. So every now and then there's like an open call where you can apply to, and then with like a committee, we choose which plans fit which organization. It's like a citywide project. So we are one of the partners, and there's more cultural organizations who are part of the project. And yeah, we're the partner who do like digital media, digital culture, maker culture.
What is funded by the community?
Yeah, by the region. Yeah.
Oh, by the region.
Yeah. So you can apply through an open call. Yeah.
There are actually a few open calls right now. Oh, I think
there's
more or so.
Yeah, for the actual production of like those productions, we're full for the year, but we still have research projects that you can apply for. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So and
Share the links around.
yeah, I will. Yeah, sure.
You mentioned that you are part of the Public Spaces network. Can you tell us something about other networks, like nationally, that other collaborations that Tetem is part of?
Yes, I can. We are so we're part of Public Spaces, and we yeah. What kind of networks do you mean? Like on open science hardware, or?
I mean, are you mostly catering like locally for Twente, or are you also having collaborations with, say, Groningen or Amsterdam, Maastricht?
Oh yeah, like that. Yeah, we have a really close collaboration with the WAAG. So WAAG is also part of Public Spaces, so we work together a lot with the WAAG. And Yeah, so and we're like a nationally funded organization, so that's part of our whole, how do you say it? Our whole vision, that we also work nationally. How do I say it? We have like a national attraction for like artists. So we don't only have a regional function for the artists, but we also take artists from outside of the Netherlands.
Residencies.
Yeah, we have residencies, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so, but I can tell you more about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, you have to scheme who is next up.
I clip this on me, don't I? All right.
This is way smoother with you.
All right, cool. I emailed it to you.
Oh, I may not have not downloaded it.
It's a Google Slides, so it should open up like in a browser.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Bit of chaos with the emails today. Do you have the ability to share audio through this? I do have a video that I'm playing on like the third slide, but if not, it's not earth-shattering.
I haven't tested that.
Well, we'll find out.
There we go.
Has anyone seen my phone?
There you are.
No, it's not that.
There you go.
Cool, easy. Yeah, cool. I'm just peeking in the live stream, and I am in the frame, which is good.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
a bit behind.
Yeah, no, perfectly fine. Yeah, hello again, everyone. As I said before, my name is Bree, and I'm the community coordinator for the Gathering for Open Science Hardware community. But we typically just call it the GOSH community because that's much easier. Just a bit of a preface, I don't have much of a technical background. My background is mostly in community organizing, and I've done a lot of work in citizen science and community science spaces. So this presentation today is going to be a little bit more about kind of how GOSH as a community functions, and a little bit more about the organizational structure of it, and less so on the technical side of hardware. So some of you might have seen before two terms when you see the acronym GOSH. You might have seen Gathering for Open Science Hardware, but also Global Open Science Hardware. And before I go further into what GOSH is, I really want to bring this up and acknowledge that these two terms actually can exist at the same time. And so we've found in the GOSH community that basically global open science hardware kind of reflects this broader movement of making open science hardware commonplace and ubiquitous. But within that, you have this gathering, this specific convening space that's called the Gathering for Open Science Hardware. And so sometimes it can be a bit confusing when you see both of these terms being used, but at least me personally, I view it as the Gathering for Open Science Hardware is this community nested within this broader global open science hardware movement. So yeah, interesting space where both can exist. This also emerged because we found that when you translate the acronym for GOSH, it doesn't necessarily translate perfectly into other languages. So our community has kind of found that it's okay if different translations emerge, and we use different terminologies when referencing GOSH. So just an interesting little fact if you've ever seen those words used before. But today I'm going to focus specifically on the Gathering for Open Science Hardware when I say GOSH. So for the rest of this presentation, when I say GOSH, I'm talking about Gathering. And this is because the GOSH community, it came about to be a convening space and a networking space for this global community that's pushing forward open science hardware. And we have shared values that are laid out by our manifesto, and a shared call to action and goals that are laid out in our roadmap. And so it is, the purpose of this is to really bring community together around shared goals of making open science hardware ubiquitous. Before we talk about I get more into GOSH, I should probably explain open science hardware as well. I know the first time I heard that word, I said, what does that mean? So we can't really talk about open science hardware unless we explain open source hardware. Some of you are probably familiar with the definition from the Open Source Hardware Association, but basically open source hardware, it just references any devices whose designs are made publicly available so that anyone can modify, distribute, make, but also sell that design as well. And I just want to acknowledge that open science hardware, it takes this concept of open source hardware and it applies it specifically to the scientific tools that we use for scientific research. So I like to think of microscopes, environmental sensors, something that you might imagine in a lab or out in the field, but the kind of definitions and boundaries around science hardware is up for debate and discussion as well. But basically it's this kind of focus on the design file being shared using an open license. My video is supposed to be here. Where are you, video? I don't know where it went. I don't have my video today, but that's perfectly fine. We're just going to have a blank screen. I'm going to tell you about it. Basically, the GOSH community is known for our annual gatherings, and I'll actually just go, whoa, it appeared. Strange. I don't know why there was two. Oh, this has not happened, but it seems to be working. Oh, nice. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I will make this full screen so that we can see it. Basically, the purpose of what I wanted to do here, if the audio works, is instead of me just telling you all about what GOSH is, I wanted to show you a short video from our recent gathering so you can see kind of what folks experience when they go to GOSH events. It's on the computer.
It looks fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can hear it, cool.
Open science hardware is about clear boxes. It's about being able to see everything inside of your tool, know exactly how it works, and know how it can be replicated for anyone in the world. This year, we brought the Gathering for Open Science Hardware to Panama. I'm really excited about having us in Panama because there's almost no place on Earth where you can have this very fascinating intersection, especially for a group that's as interested in science and technology as us, to have both of those right there. This massive globalization right next to a bunch of howler monkeys making sounds in the jungle. Probably the most important thing about the GOSH community is making these connections between all of these wonderfully strange individuals who are all incredibly active and excited about sharing their thing and finding outlets and communities for them to share with.
Cool. Apologize, it was a little quiet, but at least there was subtitles, so that helped. Cool. Let's see. How can I get back to the presentation?
Probably.
One of these. Is it this one? Aha, yes, cool. We guessed right. Yeah, so basically that was a video from our most recent gathering that we had in Panama in 2022. And basically the gatherings, which are just in-person events that the GOSH community hosts, is kind of where the community came about. The first one happened in 2016 at CERN, and it was at this event that I think it was probably less than 50 or so people. They got together and they wrote the GOSH Manifesto. And I want to talk about this document in particular because it was a really important moment in which they documented the shared values and principles within the community. And ever since the creation of that document, it's helped people like me who have joined GOSH a little bit later. I joined in 2021. The manifesto has been kind of like a compass in understanding what the community wants to achieve and what sort of values we hold together. So after they met in 2016, they then met again in Chile in 2017. With a group of about 100 people, they collectively wrote the GOSH roadmap. And this very long document basically just outlines actions that we can take as a community to make open science hardware ubiquitous by 2025. That's kind of our overarching goal. The 2025 part is a bit of a question mark, but anyways, to make it widespread and commonplace. After that, we've met in Shenzhen, China before. And then also from 2019 to 2021, the community did not meet in person, but was still quite active on our forum. And we did like virtual community calls and things like that to kind of keep a sense of belonging and kind of consistency in the community. Last one was in Panama in 2022, and then we hope to actually do another one in 2025 in Bali, Indonesia. I mentioned the roadmap, and I just want to bring it up again. I also forgot to mention in the beginning that I have linked in the schedule to a resource guide. So if there's anything that I talk about today that you're interested in knowing more about, I put links into it there so you don't have to be stressed about taking pictures or asking for certain things. Yeah, so definitely check out the resource guide. It's got links to things like the roadmap. But yeah, it covers a wide range of actions from creating mentorship programs and pipelines for people working on open hardware to creating policies aimed at key stakeholders and things like that. I do want to bring up the policy briefs that we have as well. In 2021, we did a series of writing workshops with technology transfer offices, international policymakers, and also research funders. Those were 3 audiences that we thought were key to engage with in order to make open science hardware more widespread and increase the uptake of it. Those are on our website. I definitely recommend checking them out if you're interested in policy around open science hardware. And then we also have, it's nearly 100 pages long, but it's a very useful document on how to run a GOSH event. So typically GOSH events are run in an unconference style where people set the agenda that morning before the event starts. And we've documented the processes that we take to host an event so that we don't really lose that institutional memory over time. So yeah, if you're interested in kind of event organizing and want to do something around open science hardware, that is a really, really good document as a resource. We also have tons of other resources as well, but that would be a whole nother presentation. Like, I'm not going to get too far deep into it. The next thing I want to mention is just the importance of the GOSH network itself. So we have GOSH, which represents kind of this global meeting point, but we also have several regional communities that have emerged, specifically ReGOSH in Latin America and Africa-OSH in Africa. And this is because as a global community, we realize that in order to truly grow and scale, we need to do so in a very decentralized and localized way. So a lot of these communities have emerged that are using open science hardware, but within very specific local contexts and to meet certain local needs. So yeah, it's nice to have regional groups that emerge over time. And then a new thing that's actually happening this year is we're going to have our first ever cohort of ambassadors that will be representing GOSH and open science hardware at their own respective communities. We'll be announcing the first round of selected ambassadors in August, and we'll also be sharing an ambassador handbook that's not only meant for the selected ambassadors, but anyone who wants to represent open science hardware or GOSH within their community. So we don't just want to limit it to the program. If anyone's interested in having like a document with different resources or ways to go about representing GOSH, that's why we created it. Cool. And then I do just want to close on this quote today. So I really like this quote because I think it touches on the importance of open hardware and open science hardware, but the fact that it's also embedded in social realities as well. And it's from Dr. Julieta Orancio, who will be joining us soon. She's not here yet. And Shannon Dose-Megan, who have done a lot of policy work in the GOSH community. And I'm just going to read it out loud to you all because I really resonate with it. And it's, by allowing multiple perspectives and needs to materialize in research equipment, open hardware can become a powerful tool for transforming power dynamics in knowledge production, offering a glimpse of what more efficient and more inclusive research could look like in the near future. Thank you. Yeah, that's all for my presentation. I do have a couple comments on the code of conduct and accessibility that I will touch on really quick. Some of you may have seen an email I sent out this week with the GOSH Code of Conduct. I send that out in advance because at any GOSH events, whether they're online or in person, we want to ensure that our environment remains safe, inclusive, and respectful. If a situation arises and you would like to report any sort of violation of the Code of Conduct or if something makes you uncomfortable, both myself and Laura, if you want to raise your hand again. Laura, yeah, we are the, you're like, woo, wee. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. We are the safety officers, so to speak, but you can come to us if you raise any concerns about the Code of Conduct, and we also have a tiny little blue box out by the check-in desk if you want to anonymously report anything, and we'll do our best to check that and work on it. Yeah, that's all for Code of Conduct. The restrooms are further down there if you need to use the bathroom. I think most of you saw them at the end of this hallway, and yeah, I think that's all I have to share today. Thank you. Cool. Yeah. I guess I have time for questions. I think I ended 11, so yeah, any questions about GOSH or anything I talked about?
We have examples of what open was created with GOSH?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one thing I didn't touch on that's also in the resource guide is we have on our website, we actually have sort of like a pre-directory, but a list of open science hardware projects that you can click around and see. But kind of like one of the most prominent examples that we talk about a lot is the Open Flexure microscope. I don't know if you all have heard of that before. It's a 3D printable modular open source microscope that's used for malaria detection. That's really cool. I recommend checking that device out. We've got a couple other people that work on open source like air quality monitors. I know someone from the University of Texas in Austin that's working on that. I'm actually sadly going to be leaving GOSH in a few weeks because I'm starting a research project in Panama on an open source insect monitor. So in the conservation space, we have monitors that are being developed openly and things like that. There's really a whole range of different ones, but it's a really good question. Yeah, any other?
But yeah, you work with many regional communities. So different communities probably have different resources available to them. But there may be also different types of licensing agreements depending on legislation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that much around licenses. I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot comment too much on that. For my instance with GOSH, I've been more at the level of the global community and working in that regard, but I don't know, Laura, if you know more about ReGOSH and kind of how they manage different licenses and...
Governance licenses.
Yeah. Yeah. They also secure their own funding sources, I think specific to Latin America as well. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, there was some funds for a program for residencies in all the region. And also they also received the GOSH community received some funds for regional gatherings. Yeah, they are developing each year some residency of 2 weeks, but maybe we will talk later about that.
True. Yeah, and then I had another comment on that I completely forgot, so I apologize. I've lost it. Yeah, other questions? Cool? Yeah? Awesome. If not, that's fine. We're doing great on time. I'm very impressed. Cool. I think next up we had Julieta, but Jean-Martin, if it's okay, would you mind going and doing your presentation now because she's not here yet?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
if that's okay with you, we could jump to that one.
Wires. Laptops and water, what can go wrong, right? Right, Jan Maarten Luursema, that's me. I've got various backgrounds. I have a background in the arts and in medical illustration. This is a picture I did. This is a picture I did of part of human anatomy. I did my PhD here in Enschede at the U Twente about the role of individual differences in learning anatomy and in learning surgical skills. And my day job is in Nijmegen these days, where I train surgeons in keyhole surgery. I'm not going to provide like a grand sweeping overview of hardware in medicine, but I'm basically going to talk about my experiences as a maker working at the Radboud University and the kind of challenges and opportunities that arise from there. So, simulations for surgery training. It has a long
tradition, like already 600 BCE on the Indian subcontinent. The Hindu surgeon Sushruta advocates using gourds, which are like a type of melons with a leathery skin, to practice suturing and knot tying. And this is actually done like almost in the same way these days. People use bananas and oranges. The principle is the same. So you have a very long, continuous tradition of simulation in surgery. And of course it makes a lot of sense, right, to use simulation when the skills you need to learn are complex, high stakes, like it's a life or death type of thing, and expensive. And if you can cut off a bit of the learning curves in a safe and controlled environment, that's a good thing. So there's simulation in surgery, and we typically run that in skills labs. Laparoscopic surgery is complex for a couple of reasons. One of the major reasons is that it's spatially complex. You introduce your camera, the laparoscope, and your instruments through trocars, which are ports that are introduced in the abdominal wall into the abdominal cavity. The belly is blown up with gas, but you work over a pivot, meaning if you move your hand to the right, the sharp end of the instrument inside of the patient will move to the left. It's tricky. And on top of that, you have indirect vision. Like the camera is introduced in the patient, but what the camera projects through a monitor, which is in a very different location compared to the anatomy that you're working on. On top of that, the camera moves during a procedure, so it's not like you make one transition and then you're good for the procedure. You need to dynamically adjust your mental perspective on what it is that you're doing. This makes it spatially complex. So for laparoscopic surgery, there are simulators available. You've got the fundamentals of laparoscopy video box trainer. You've got the LabSim virtual reality trainer. These are devices. You've got a big shelf of literature, so it's like well validated. We know that there's transfer of skills from these simulators to the operating room, which is a good thing. However, they are very expensive and not very flexible. You know, what you buy is what you get, and you need especially for the virtual reality trainer, you need maintenance. You need qualified personnel. You need a contract every year. They need to come in to serve you and make sure that it's still working to specification, which can make it a bit, bit of a challenge. And also, what I want to train basically has to do with spatial skills and damage control. Many people focus on speed when they train. If I'm faster, I'm better. But people get faster, that's kind of trivial. So we focus on damage control, and then speed will follow, basically. And what you see here is that people, basically, their working space is very well aligned with their visual space. So these spatial transitions are not covered in these very expensive machines. That's because when they develop them, they rarely get medical personnel in to actually have a go at it so that they can learn from their experience. So what I did, I designed and printed a trocar, one of these ports, and that led to the AnyBox system, because basically any cardboard box or any dishwashing basin can be turned into a laparoscopic simulator with these trocars. And with this system, it's got a camera on here, and it's got like trocars all around the thing. So you can systematically change the difficulty of your exercise. If you got your camera aligned with your instruments, like your instruments are to either side of the camera, is easy. If you turn it like 45 degrees, suddenly it's a lot more challenging to do the same exercise. And as you progressively turn the camera, the drill gets progressively more difficult. until you meet 180 degrees, then all of a sudden it's get easier because you basically mirror everything and you're good to go. I designed some exercises as well. And basically, yeah, that's flexible. Only sets you back like 40 euros or so in materials. I'm definitely the most expensive part of the whole system. And you can easily make versions too. This is a version where I built a laparoscope, the good scope, because it's very inexpensive to make. And basically you can train in pairs, which is important too. Usually skills training is like a solo affair. In the operating room you always need to communicate with your team. So here you can have like a camera assistant and like the main person performing the tasks, and people will have to negotiate a little bit about how to operate the camera and what is going on in the task that you're doing. Yeah, my work involves I often make anatomical models too. I use like MR or CT data sets, and I create like 3D models of the relevant anatomy. Sometimes I make molds so I can cast a miniature liver, for instance, in a different material. So it's more like lifelike in terms of texture. And yeah, that's the kind of thing I do. And there's like many labs around the world that work in a very similar way. When I'm on a conference elsewhere, I typically seek out the local skills lab and I have a chat about what is it that you're doing and how do you do it. And everybody is like tinkering along in a very similar way. So then I ask them like, okay, so would you like to share? Sometimes they can. Sometimes they have a page up on their website with a recipe how to make it. Some of these things I have on various places too. Some of it is on a GitHub. I think I've got some things on Thingiverse, and it's in various places. And then I'm like, what else would you want to do with it? And then typically the conversation stops short because people will be like, okay, well, but it's intellectual property, right? And we got a valorization department. I cannot just go out and share this with you, with the world. And I entered that discussion too with the valorization department at the Radboud University. And they basically are like, yeah, well, you know, you can make some extra pictures and you can do this and you make a business plan, and then we will put you in contact with production companies and they will take your design and market it. And I'm like, I'm not looking for another job. I want to share this kind of stuff, right? Because I feel that a lot of hardware, a lot of designs are shared in a small way, but what we really need is like user experience, like how do you use that thing? What kind of course does it fit in? And also what's good performance on your equipment, right? Like do some research on skills development by sharing that data. And that data sharing part is kind of virtually non-existent. It's like the big simulator companies are happy to work from a central server, but they keep user data, which rightly belong to the students themselves. They keep it locked up in their databases. So basically, it's like Google all over again, only in a smaller setting. You lost control. And you weren't even thinking about it. Right? So these are challenges. And I'm happy to share these things, but I sure hope nobody's going to make any money off of them, because then I'm in trouble with the valorization department. So actually they provided me, ironically, with a motivation not to make any money with it, because then I will get in trouble. So yeah, I would like to do more in validation and usage, but it's kind of hard because of intellectual property and valorizations issues. In principle, the people that I talk to, all of them are open to the possibility. All of them would like to get a thing like that going. And of course the opportunity, it's frugal, it's adaptable, you can maintain it yourself. It's also community oriented in principle. These are all, I'm sure you're all very familiar with these arguments, and that's what it is like for me in this setting as well. Do I have a little bit time still?
Let's see. Yeah, you have plenty of time.
Oh, that's cool. Going a bit fast, maybe. Okay, just on the off chance that I would go fast, I have a couple of other slides lined up with some other projects that are not necessarily tied to my job as a skills instructor at the Radboud University. One thing I noticed when talking to our surgeons and other medical doctors is that people can be in pain, right? They have had a procedure, they're in pain, and basically they lie on ward in their bed having pain all day long. And we know that because pain is measured. It's like every day a nurse will enter the room and will ask, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain do you experience? And people will tell them, like today it's a 4, today it's a 6, etc. Then I was like, that's not a very satisfying situation. You know, for one thing, the doctor is there or the nurse is there asking, so there's a psychological effect. If there's a person there that can help you, typically people experience more pain. Because if you're not experiencing pain when they're asking, you don't get treatment, right? So the person being there biases the answer that you get, and also you ask like once, at a set moment, every day. There's a lot more onces in a day, right? So you might just very easily miss the moment people are actually in pain, and you learn very little about the variation of pain throughout a day. Probably when it's visiting hours, there's a lot of people in the hallway, lots of social things going on, people get distracted, people don't experience pain so much. When it's quieter, like in the morning, in the afternoon, late afternoon, evening, people probably experience more pain. But we don't know because we don't ask and we have no way of measuring it that way. So what I thought of, and this is like the initial sketch of that thing, is like I was thinking of children in pain. I was like, isn't pain easier to bear if you have like another person with you or an entity with you that is also experiencing pain? So I thought like, why not use a pressure sensor so you can squeeze your hand in someone else's hand, and depending on the pressure, you get like a changing facial expression. So you're in pain together. So, which like might lessen the pain, who knows. And also you get an incentive, like you see, oh no, they are in pain too. You get an incentive to kind of like lessen the pressure and maybe downplay your own pain in the process. So that was the initial thought. And then I was like, I have not made yet something that has this many nuts and bolts. It's kind of complex. You got hardware, you got software, there's lots of new things to develop. So I was like, I'm going to ask for help on this one. And that I did. I entered a trajectory at De Waag, who had like a medical program at that moment. And I got a group together and we worked on this project. And it got to a prototype. Like we used a knitted sensor, a sensor that includes some electrical wire. So if you squeeze it, the wire is short, and you get a different resistance in the process. And it works. This is like a graph of squeezing the sensor. You really get a signal that way. So that worked. And then the project stopped, and I had a prototype, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got a prototype. Then I tried again with the Han in Nijmegen. I actually did it 3 times with various student groups, and every time we got a nice working prototype at the end of the road. This is one I worked on myself. I cast like a rubber squeeze thingy and hooked it up to a barometric sensor. So this whole project, it was a lot of fun to do. Right now, like maybe some 20, 30 people worked on it. So if ever anyone makes money of it, it's going to be really hard to track everybody down to make sure that everybody gets reimbursed or at least named as part of the process. But it never made the next step. It's kind of like, okay, so there's a prototype. What do I do now? Whom do I approach to take the next step on this one? I haven't figured it out yet. To be honest, I didn't work really hard on it either because, you know, new projects interfered and other things got distracted me in the process. I wanted to tell this story as an example, like a real world example of what can happen when you take it broader and work in groups, right? And the challenges that come with that in particular. Oh yeah, and to not end on a down note, I wanted to show some things. This really warrants a presentation of its own, like the COVID response in the medical field. That was such a big deal, and that there's so many organizations that formed during that process, and so many processes and protocols and ways of working developed in that brief time frame. No way I can cover that in a couple of slides, so I'm not going to try. One of the earliest things that people came up with was the Wuhan hook. Like somebody in China figured out if you take a hex key to a lighter, you can use the key to manipulate things so you don't have to touch them, because touching things is like dangerous, people thought initially. And you can clean it afterwards using the lighter. I was like, that's a cool idea. So I made one. It's easy enough, right? You get some tape and there you go. Then I found it wasn't a very stable construction. The tape was never tight enough and you had wiggle room, and it was not real, it didn't work that well for manipulating things. So I designed and printed a 3D thingy, shared it too, which got us the Hook of Holland, and it worked better. It was more stable that way. I was like slowly committed to the track of touching things, which in the grand scheme of things wasn't the most important things, because ultimately it was aerosols, right? It was like particles in the air rather than surfaces that were spreading COVID. So it's like, if you want to touch surfaces, why not make something like that is a bit like an open glove? I tried that. It was kind of hard to manipulate with that, so I was like, maybe I need to make it more sturdy, like this, like cast a bit of silicone, have some rings where your fingers go in, and use it like that. This was also not very easy to manipulate, so ultimately I ended up with a device like this, where you can I actually brought it, so it's here for interaction. You click the thing in place with an embedded magnet on a holder, and then you can basically use it. You can dislodge it, use it for all kinds of daily activities. The contaminated surface goes back flat on the holder, so you don't spread anything, and you can very focusedly clean the area that has been in contact with surfaces. Yeah, you basically have after some training, I was able to use a keypad with it, so I could use it in stores to pay for things. And for people with like a fear of contamination or any kind of OCD type, this would still be a good solution. And it's out there. I published it, I think, on Wevolver. I will put it on a GitHub later. And
Cool. Thank you, John Martin. So we're probably going to move into a quick coffee break. There will be snacks and coffee and all sorts of fun stuff that we can have out there. We do have a new guest. Will you have to say hello? Quickly introduce yourself. Where did you come from today?
Sure. I'm Greta. I'm coming from Berlin, and I'm familiar with the of course. And I'm working there as kind of mix of social scientist and community organizer. I did my PhD and also studied the Harvard community in science. So that's where I was to go with people. And I will be sharing some ideas I'm really sorry I missed the morning part, but I'm very excited about your presentation, and I hope we can discuss some of the things out there for you. And that's it.
Yeah. Also, did anyone have a question for Jean-Martin? I forgot to ask him and say it. Did anyone have a question about his presentation? We got two. Peter, you go first.
Regarding your first example in AnyBox, you're talking to your tech transfer department, and they're looking at it as a piece of hardware. Have you ever tried to look at it as an educational resource and plug it as open educational resource rather than open hardware, which might easier for them to grasp? Oh, this is not hundreds of thousands of things, mass production, money.
That makes a lot of sense. Also, they told me it will be really hard to patent, for instance, because it's more like a design than a new hardware solution. So that actually would be a really useful approach, yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of same question about when you make something and you want to spread the words about it and for everyone, but it's almost impossible because you can't sell it because and you cannot make money from it. So it looks like the money part is more important than to share the knowledge part.
Yeah, I've seen it for other colleagues that developed things as well. Somebody developed a serious game where you basically play a doctor in a hospital and you have like competing interests to deal with. Like you can either make management happy and earn a lot of money, or you can make the patient happy by ordering a couple of additional tests. Right? So you can play the game in different ways.
Does it have to do also that the first example you gave, you developed it while you were an employee of an institution, and then all intellectual property belongs to them because you are paid to do that job, versus the other things that was open source hardware, not open science, I think also, and you made it completely free. So then how to put it into the community is a different issue, I think.
Yeah, much easier.
And why did that not work? It's a general issue about make help. The whole project, I think nothing went into where it should be.
Well, I think with like this middle project to have a different way available to measure pain, it's basically, yeah, if I make that my life's goal for the next 10 years, I'm sure I could pull it through and get it somewhere. But there were different things that I prioritized.
I know.
Deepak raised your hand, and then Juliet as well. So I'm going to go to Deepak for question.
I think it's a bit related to the whole accessibility and sharing. So did the valorization team come up with some sort of licensing licenses that you could apply to make it more open source hardware? Because there are licenses that restrict companies to sort of not keep it for themselves, like GPL. Because if you have that, the companies have to release those designs as well.
Our valorization department is not really up to speed on the opportunity that licenses.
I see an opportunity there.
Then Juliet, and then we'll go to break.
Yeah, it was quite similar to that one. What would you envision as an up-to-date valorization? Like, what would be the support? For example, would they support you to do what? To openly license it, to generate a community around it? How do you think of that?
It's tricky, right? Especially in the medical space where it's partly public, partly private. There's like different types of interests. It's not like a single system economically that drives the whole thing. But I think there's been work been done in Boston, not MIT, but Harvard economists who really look into how you can cooperate between business an open source or an open hardware community. Like the ways business, they look into how businesses can facilitate open hardware builders and then help with the things businesses typically are good at, which is like production and selling stuff, right? Scaling up.
Okay, so it's kind of like a startup incubator but open source, let's say.
Yeah, like a mixed model.
We tried that at the University of Bath, and it was hard because it was hard to find companies interested in open source business.
Right.
But yeah.
So there's a lot of conversations to be had in that.
Yes.
Well, maybe to add to that, what you currently see in the open source software development is that you see companies popping up that add services to open source software. So managing the installation, for example, but it's still the open software, but you kind of pay for the additional services. I haven't found that yet in open hardware. But perhaps it could be something like, if you talk about Series VR or something like that, do an open hardware development on that, but then a company could, for example, do the actual lecturing on that one, training, additional services.
There are only a few, but there are quite
Very two. Oh,
When hardware, I often put on the CERN license.
Is then free for all, or what is certain license activity?
The CERN license. Yeah,
It has now it changed, right? The last version.
I think they have a couple of
Yeah.
versions also that you can go with. It includes the viral option where it is like, if they adapt your hardware, they need to publish it under the same license.
So like GPL basically.
Yeah, but CERN was before, like the first term open hardware license was copyleft like that.
Yeah.
But now it gives you, because the community kind of said, hey, we don't just want copyleft. Now you have flavors to choose from, like a more strong copyleft, a weaker, and something more like an MIT license.
Yeah.
Some on the different levels.
So
Yeah, they have three.
Yeah.
I might reel us back because we do have time for break, because some people may want snacks and things like that. Yeah, so yeah, let's have a break. We'll continue the conversation out there. Marlene is
Nu wel.
Ja, ik completely forgot that we
Is AI
Sean Martin, do we need to do anything with the screen, or are we good to go?
We're,
Do we need to like,
we're good to go.
oh, okay. I was like, I didn't know if we did. Cool. Anyone need any water before we get started, or are we all good? Cool, awesome. Yeah, so we're gonna have another about hour or so of presentations, and we're gonna start with Peter first, so yeah.
Thank you. So I'm supposed to talk to you about hardware hacking in the Netherlands. Whoever thought that I should be the person, I know this connection is coming through Waag. Peter van Bremen, who's a colleague of mine working on AI and ethics at Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences, proposed that I should talk about hardware hacking in the Netherlands, as I'm supposed to have an overview. I wasn't taking into account that this would be a small screen with a large audience. So I'm currently a research professor at Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences and worked in a number of open hardware projects, often as a kind of member of the advisory board, so people really think that I know a lot about open hardware. So this was the OpenNext, Plastic Twist, the remodel. OpenNext obviously was connected to Waag as well. The remodel, the Danish project that actually tried to involve industry with open source and tried various models there. I'm also a visiting professor at the Cooperative University of Amersfoort, which gives this whole university thing and open hardware a different twist. I'll come back to that later in my presentation. I've also worked or have relations to the Dutch Fab Lab Foundations. I've worked at Waag in Amsterdam a very long time ago, in 2007 to 2009, worked on projects like Creative Commons, like the Fab Lab. So my job at the time was to turn the Fab Lab from a project into a facility, which obviously worked. I've worked in Scotland as well at University of Aberdeen as a sort of technology transfer person. So I was looking there at this whole thing from a sort of different angle. Did a lot of consultancy in life with SMEs, with non-governmental organizations, with governments. And very back in the time when I was doing my master's in industrial engineering, I worked at Alstom as an industrial engineer, hooking up big industrial robots to big industrial milling machines. And I also did a number of arts projects and festivals and stuff like that. So there you go. Anybody of you using these kind of smart watches? Who's got a Fitbit? Yes. And you would be surprised that inside the Fitbit is open source hardware hacking that started in the Netherlands in 2008. There was this guy, he was on a student exchange from Canada to Delft and was irritated that his phone went buzzing when he was riding a bike. So I thought there must be a solution to bring the buzzing phone to my armrest. And he started hacking a BlackBerry combined with a Nokia display, and this was the very first iteration of what became the Pebble, which I still use, which was bought up by Fitbit in 2000 something, can't remember, for 2.3 billions or something. So open hardware hacking, that made it into your Fitbit. That's him in 2008, Eric Migiowski. Another prototype, which you see even an Arduino in the back there doing some kind of computational magic between the BlackBerry and the Nokia phone, which he uses as a display. This one just came out. It's called a Factor 4, an industrial 3D printer made by Ultimaker, now the Dutch know Ultimaker. This is how Ultimaker started years ago. I think that was in 2010 or something. So really like 14, 15 years ago. People in Utrecht, Protospace, which still existed at that time, a fab lab, producing RepRaps. From the RepRap, they modeled the protobox. The first instance of the Ultimaker started really off as an open source project, sharing designs with the community, integrating community improvements, particularly into the printhead. They didn't exactly go down the MakerBot route, who also started like an open source thing and then got venture capital in, closed down the whole project. Bought up by one of the big ones. Ultimaker is still owned by a Dutch financial holding, which is part of another financial holding, and in this whole family of financial things, it's interesting for the Dutch. Mammoet, the heavy lifting company, is part of that. Hobeon, which we all know in education as one of the certification agencies, is part of that same family. And Ultimaker is part of that same family. And of course they came out with this completely closed source industrial thing. Going all the way from open source hardware to industrial, and when it gets industrial, and when there is venture capital involved, the only the money you're exchanging in venture capital, and that's the trouble with the tech transfer agencies. The money you exchange, the value you exchange is your patents. So if you go with a pile of patents, you're worth a lot, even if those patents are probably mostly useless and just written not to protect your tech, but to expand your idea in as many areas of tech as possible. That's a different story. Another thing that emerged from the open source hardware hacking community, this is a website called Wevolver, which is currently used by many engineering companies, universities across the globe as a platform to collaborate on engineering designs. Started off by a guy, Bram Genen. He's still the guy behind the platform, so if you click on contact on Wevolver, you get an email, bram@wevolver.com. In 2012, he sent this email to the then still functioning Open Design mailing list run by the Open Knowledge Foundation. Hi, my name is Bram Genen. I'm a product designer from Amsterdam. Together with friends, I'm developing an online collaboration platform that also allows people to open up their projects using Creative Commons and open source hardware licenses. So again, starting in 2012 with this idea of open source and moving into an industrial platform that's apparently so robust that universities like Michigan, like ETH Zurich, and a lot of professional engineering companies use this thing. So I'm delving into a few communities of open source hardware, and who knows where that is? You know. The others? No? You want to briefly tell me what it is?
I think, it's kind of Berlin hackerspace, but also a lot of community projects and open for everyone to do some activities there.
Yeah.
That's what I understand it.
Yes, so C-Base, they have this story that, you know it, yeah, right. So they've got this story that the spaceship landed on Berlin and sort of went underground, and they are in that spaceship. It's really impressive, and the story is so consistent. So if you got the chance to go there and visit, do it. Have a tour. It's amazing.
The antenna is the TV tower.
Yes, the TV tower in formerly Eastern Berlin is the antenna of the spaceship, and they're called the mother of all hacker spaces. Started somewhere in long time ago, but really kind of, this first space that brought this idea of hacker spaces together, which is not only open source hardware, and I think that resonates with what you told us about GOSH. It's not only about the hardware, it's also a lot about having fun together. So I think this is an ingredient. Now, moving to the Netherlands, the hackers among us know those gatherings, which started in this kind of spaceship analogy with the Galactic Hacker Party, hacking at the end of the universe. Anybody studied English literature among us? So this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, ringing a bell there. Hacking in Progress, Hackers at Large, What the Hack, and then sort of in the 2009, 2013, 2017, 2022, moving in those computer and security acronyms. Oh yeah, we know that from electricity. It stands for Observe, Hack, Make. They're coming up with a next edition next year. Why? Which is kind of interesting. The full name is What Hackers Yearn. So, but this question, why? What are we doing here in hacking? This is a map of the official map of the official hackerspaces in the Netherlands, with all the names. Tukkelab is here, hello. And this idea of why, I've looked at the hackerspaces.org mailing lists. So there is an announcement list which had, before April 2024, a message that says, should we restart using the announcement and discussion mailing list? The last message before that was in May 2012. So, and if you look at the discussion archives, they're a bit more frequent, but again you see in July 2024, the whole downloadable version, not even zipped, is 748 bytes, whereas 10 years ago, the gzipped text was 148K. So there is a reason why they're asking why in hackerspaces. And maybe you can tell us over lunch a bit more about why all those old men with beards and where's the youth? Now where's the youth?
Very quick question.
Yeah, sure.
That gap was no communication or another platform that they were using. What happened there?
I think there were a lot of technical problems.
Okay.
And it's all
10 years of technical
and it's all volunteer run, so it's
Yeah.
always how to keep something up and running. So.
Yeah, like young volunteers coming in and getting older, having kids, other priorities, oh, this shit server, security, outdated, and you know how it goes. Right, Fab Labs. So I was at the start of the Fab Labs in the Netherlands in 2007. This is how it looked in 2009. And this is really, if you go to Wikipedia, this is the picture of a Fab Lab on Wikipedia. I think we should change it to something like that, which is my lab at Rotterdam University. And what I want to illustrate between those two images, there are almost no people. If you look, there's somebody hiding in the corner, in the darkest corner of the picture. This is a lab full of people. So again, you know, it's not just the hardware. It's more the hacking, which is a process, which is a social thing. This is the official maps of Fab Labs taken from the MIT run or sponsor site, with a lot of like grey labs in there that don't exist anymore, and tons of labs looking at the libraries particularly. 40% of libraries in the Netherlands do have a makerspace. 40%. That's unique globally. Absolutely unique. And you're even pushing that further. You know, every library here in Twente will have a makerspace. So there are the young people coming in again. Hey, hang on. In this famous publication, Open Design Now, of which I was an author and editor back in 2011, I drew up that kind of diagram, sort of saying, what are we doing? Are we reproducing or are we generating stuff? And are we more an infrastructure or are we more project oriented? And definitely the hackerspaces and Fab Labs are moving to generating new stuff, like your AnyBox, and acting between being an infrastructure, a social infrastructure I should add, and working on projects. Trying to look at universities in the Netherlands, there's a lot of open hardware going on. This is at TU Delft. This is at Wageningen. No, this is at Twente. This is at Wageningen. This is at TU Eindhoven. So you see the TUs coming along quite nicely. And even the University of Utrecht has this proto lab where apparently some open source stuff is going on. I think colleagues might be able to fill in that in more detail. There is NWO, which is a major academic funding organization in the Netherlands. They do have an open science fund. I looked at their projects, 78 projects, and when you look at university distribution, yes, it's the TUs, the 4 TUs that are working there. It's the UMCs. We've heard about open source hardware in healthcare and medicine. They're quite active. But a lot of other universities are active as well. And if you look at the disciplines in projects, 32 projects in computer science, 20 projects in life science, plus 10 in medicine. Psychology quite high in the list. Computer and humanities quite high in the list, which is interesting. But I guess that's the link to open science and all these ideas and activities. There are lesser known things. Anybody heard of the Low Tech magazine? Great. Solar powered, so this website might go offline when there is no sun and the battery is down. Have a look at it. Very, very, very funny project run by a Dutch guy out of Barcelona. People might have heard, certainly in the hacker scene, about Koppelting in Amersfoort, a smallish Dutch hacking event, hacking social, whatever. And this is funny because those pictures turned out upside down, but you can't read it anyway, so it doesn't matter. I just pretend it has to be like that. There's a project, Meteostat, measure your city. It's very much about air quality, and these are self-built air quality sensors that actually citizen scientists put in their back garden to measure air quality, typically temperature, humidity, particles. They're trying to move into CO2 and these kind of things. And there is a group in Amersfoort where the project started. There is a group in Bergen, Norway.
What's the name of the project? I don't see it from here.
I'm going to share the presentation with all the URLs. And this is and the third is in Tilburg, again a city in the Netherlands. A project going into art and biology. Colleague of mine, Roland van Dierendonk, biohaptics, sort of an installation how you interact with biology through haptics. There are the URLs for these. Why? Some of the issues about open hardware and open hardware hacking, and you might have encountered these when working with Latin America and Africa. The affordances and the capacities are very, very different between a fab lab or an industrial woodworking setup or very manual woodworking setup here with the example of the woodworking. So when we discuss open hardware, we often just discuss, the bill of materials and the diagrams, but we don't take into account the capabilities that are needed to actually manufacture or make a particular object. And this could be equipment, but this could equally be power supply. This could equally be material supply. This could be material qualities. Talking about this project.
I just wanted to flag it. We've got about 2 more minutes for you.
Yeah, I'm almost done. This particular project, there was Open Knowledge Festival in Helsinki in 2011, where we run an open design, open hardware stream, and we invited Taylor Hawkinson from the US. He built this desktop CNC machine open source. So he came with the drawings to rebuild the machine in Helsinki. And, my designs are imperial, Helsinki is metric. Conversion. I'm using standard MDF. Well, standard MDF in the US is completely different to standard MDF in Helsinki. Like, the width of the material is different, which impacts your design. When this wall is 7 millimeters or 7.8 millimeters, that screws up your machine. So availability of materials, standards, and also take into account circularity. And then there's a funny thing. This is the family tree of the RepRap. Starting with the RepRap here, rebuilding the RepRap, the Ultimaker coming up down there, the latest Prusa somewhere down the line. What you see is it starts with the RepRap and then explodes. So rather than people contributing to open source hardware, they fork. So is that a not invented here problem? Or is that really localization that is needed because of material standards, quality, stuff like that? And the big question there is, and I think that's what GOSH is about, is that federated learning, how to bring together the experiences that we make across the globe into one design rather than exploding it into thousands of different designs that don't talk to each other. Rounding up, we shouldn't be bothered too much about the products and the symbols, like your licenses, and is this Creative Commons or GPL or CERN? Hours, days, weeks, decades of discussion. Look at interactions, look at systems. This is a report that just came out in last year, again about open science, areas of ecosystem integrity, and then we go into values. And I think that's the reason why we is your code of conduct at GOSH in the beginning, because it's all about your value systems where your hacking is embedded in. So that's me. It's this turned black. All the references. I'll make sure that's turning white. Just those photos to remind you, these are blast furnaces. These are early airplanes. These are early computers. This was all open source. So actually engineering comes from open source and copying and sharing. And closing down patents, proprietary stuff is just an invention of the economy, stupid. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to jump to Deepak actually now. We're going to have a change in schedule. If you are ready for this, I think for the sake of time, we might have to skip questions for now, but then during lunch and stuff.
I'll be around all day. Yep.
I think I probably need to get the presentation from your mailbox.
Sure.
I just sent it
Your email is?
to Nukuntla. Probably it's the first email.
Yeah, there we go.
latest, yeah. Open
Oh,
Store.
there we go.
Yeah.
Wait, probably I should just save it.
Oh, you could save it from the browser as well.
There we go, that seems a good place for it. Ta-da. It kind of feels like the people seeing all of that, like
Oh, yeah,
you got your
sorry,
pants down,
sorry.
right? There we go, something is happening.
I think from the view or something.
Never used this one. This one?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so away with that.
Cancel.
Away with that. This one?
Fit to width. Yeah. Okay. Can I use
Yeah,
the mouse?
sure. There we go.
Okay.
You can just clip it on your shirt if you
All right. Thank you all for having me here. So I think this is one of the how should I say? One of the aspects of a community that we try to collaborate with other communities and create a network and also learn from each other. So I have been practicing open science principles for more than a decade now, and luckily I got the opportunity to become a coordinator of a community, that is the Open Science Community Twente. Of course, the community doesn't just start by itself. There are some founding members, and these are the three who actually made some effort to start it in Twente. So Raul, Marga, and Thomas are all professors at the University of Twente, and they also, just like me, believed a lot in the open science-ness of the work that they were doing, and hence they decided to start it. And the professors don't have time, so they need coordinators. And we have 4 coordinators. Luckily, one professor still said, I have time, so I will continue being the coordinator as well as the founder. So the people from UT, they were lucky enough to get some funding, so they could register some hours for this open science activities. And the people from Saxion, so that's Ruth Steltenpool and me, We don't have any hours to do this. We do it purely out of the love for open science. So I'm sure most of you are still very passionate open science believers, and hence also doing it purely out of love. But that's great. Keep up the spirit and continue all the hard work that you're all putting in. So, but what is really the idea behind open science? It's to actually make your work fair. And what does FAIR stands for? Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So the idea here is to make your work findable, to make your work accessible, to make sure if somebody is using it, to at least he or she or they are able to reproduce it, and also if they want to integrate it with their own solutions, is there some interoperability? And this is all what the open science community is actually trying to achieve, because there are so many researchers out there, so many, not research, I mean, I think we are all researchers because we are all learning new things, so I think we are always researching. You don't need to have a PhD to be a researcher, but I think as long as you have the knowledge, you are a researcher. You're a born researcher. And all we want to do here is to make our work fair. And this is what the open science community is trying to achieve here. How can we help all born researchers to make their work fair? And fair can be open, fair can be closed, fair can be premium. It all again burns down to the IP and licenses issue, but that's something we don't need to worry about. If you want to make your work fair, go open first, and then if people complain, then think about the licenses and IP and stuff. But that's something you don't really have to worry about when you start being fair. So how do we do it? We organize a variety of open science events. For example, I don't know how it works in the hardware community, but when you're dealing with data sets, code, open source code, or any other output that you have generated in your work, you would like to know if you for example have some code, you would like to know how should I be managing it. So there is an event where we organize something like software management plan, you know, where we will help you to sort of arrange your code in a nice systematic manner so that people who are using it further down the lane are able to understand what you did, and it's also interoperable or reusable. Another event that is called Code Check NL, to make sure that your work is reproducible. So what this I think there are a group of volunteers who, what they do is sort of check your code, give you a certificate. Oh, the code that you provided to me is actually working. Because I'm pretty sure most of us have come across some repositories or some code where you download it and it doesn't work. And then this is some sort of a check, you know, just to make sure that your code is actually reusable. Another event is like where we very much focus on is the Open Science Guide for early career researchers. I mean, you can strip out the early career researchers. I would just say born researchers. And this is basically the guide to, you know, practice some open science principles. So how can you make your work fair? And this is also what is the core focus of our open science community in general. And I'm pretty sure you might have also come across a scenario where you end up with a lot of data sets. And one of the aspects that we also see in universities with researchers is they generate a lot of data sets, but however, those data sets are never exposed because they don't know how to do it. And this is where, again, the valorization team or the digital competence center team comes into play, like data stewards, you might have heard of them within your organizations, where they come and help us to share their knowledge on how can we do it, how can we make our work fair, in this case, fair data sets. And how can you also publish your articles in open access journals? I think that is one of the biggest hurdle at the moment in the country, where we are trying to make sure all the researchers are publishing in open access journals instead of closed journals, because they always charge a lot of money, and most of the research is done with tax money. So we want to make sure that the taxpayers' money is actually spent on useful thing, and the taxpayer can access those journals without having to go through the paywalls. And this is also what we are trying to fight for with open access principles. And I also heard today there were some issues with licensing and IP. Those topics are also discussed in these open science events, the community events. And I mean, there are many activities that we coordinate within the community and organize these events throughout the year. So every community is striving for this, and they all try to present as much information as possible to verify your work. And yeah, verify. Yeah. That's the beauty of English. Last but not the least, in September we have the Open Science National Week, that is from 23rd to 27th September. And during that week, every local chapter of the Open Science community in Netherlands is organizing something. So with that note, we are not the only one community in the Netherlands. The first Open Science community in the Netherlands was started in Utrecht in 2018, and we started in 2021. But you can see that the idea of to make your work fair is just spreading. We are not the only one. I think in total there are now 11 communities in the Netherlands trying to promote the open science principles in every possible way. So I heard you're from Leiden, you're from Nijmegen, you're from, well, you're Twente, you should join us. And one from Rotterdam. I think all the universities in Netherlands have an open science community now. So if there is any chapter that you feel more attached to, please reach out to them. I mean, you don't have to reach out. It's pretty easy to become a member. You just have to fill in a form, and then it's free. And what do you get out of it? You get a lot of information in form of newsletters. You get invitations to events where, you know, it's just like this, where you meet fellow open science believers and you learn from each other, problems, solutions, which is more or less what we're also trying to do here, right? In Netherlands, is not the only country that is doing open science community related activities. It's also spreading throughout the world. So it just shows that there are more believers who would actually want to practice these principles that we are trying to preach and practice. Yeah. So these slides will be shared across. So whenever you have time, feel free to, this is for the Twente QR code, but if there is some chapter that you actually belong, you think you should be part of, please check them out, and it's very easy to join the event. And also, I think we do strive to communicate between other communities. There are events, national events, like there's one going to happen in Maastricht this year. It's the Open Science National Event, and there's also an Open Science Retreat where the coordinators meet other coordinators, so that way you also get to know what's happening within other communities. And some useful links, but I think the first one is quite relevant for GOSH, where it's like a starter kit to start your own open science community. I don't think there is one in Netherlands which is open science hardware community, and I think this could be something that you could, because I see there are a lot of fab labs, a lot of different hacking spaces, and I think this could be a really nice possibility where you can start your own open science hardware community and also see how it relates to with GOSH and well, Gathering and Global and all different communities out there. And also based on your talk about the infrastructure and reproductiveness and sorry, I forgot the two other axes. Yeah. So there is, so recently the Dutch government released around 12.5 million euros for funding open science activities, and there is a call called the Open Science Infrastructure Call. Maybe that is something useful for the hardware people. And the good thing is University of Applied Sciences can also be main applicants, and there are other Dutch institutions who could also be applicants. So it's not just, open science is not just restricted to universities, but it's also now moving to applied sciences universities and other institutions. So this call could be something for the open science hardware community to set up some infrastructure so that you can make your work more open and verify it. So yeah, these are some useful links I think could be relevant for most of you here. The slides will be shared, and this is all what I wanted to talk about the community in Twente. For the Tookers, feel free to join us. For, I don't know what are the other names. What are the people from Leiden? Leidenaars?
Leidenaars.
Yeah, for the Leidenaars, join Leiden. Nijmegen?
Den Haag.
Oh, okay. Hagenese, yeah. And do you consider to be a Rotterdammer? Or yeah, okay. So there is also Erasmus Open Science Community. Please feel free to reach out to them. And for the rest, there is one in Berlin as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Buenos Aires.
Oh, Buenos Aires. I think it's a great opportunity for you to start one there. Yeah. Well, and for the student associations, I think you please promote this within your student association, where students are also welcome to join the community, and of course there's always free coffee. So, yeah. Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Probably have time for about 1 or 2 questions if anyone has a question.
I have a very simple question.
Yes.
Instead of publishing everything public, isn't it possible that institutions give out email addresses to people that are not official students or workers? Because very often you cannot go behind the paywall or whatever because you don't have an institution
True.
email address.
I think you probably need the institutional email address if you are using these official journals, but if you are on archive or other publishing platforms where you don't really need to have an institutional address. So you could have, maybe you just need an ORCID account or some other accounts where you don't really need to be part of an institution. You can still publish your work on these platforms.
But I don't want to publish, I want to read.
Because it's behind the paywall. But that is something we are fighting for now, where, once you have open access articles, you don't need a paywall, you don't need an institution account because anybody can read it. And that's the push that we're trying to make now, so that researchers or any person publishing is publishing in open access journals. But the solution, the current, if you're looking for a solution now, unfortunately, institutes don't provide institutional accounts so that anybody can access the article. I am not a policy maker, so I don't know. Yeah, maybe you know.
I find a lot of biology papers on archive websites, like
preprints, yeah.
websites, or people will share it through ResearchGate or so, but that's not a very systemic approach to solve this. One thing, many closed journals have like an open access options these days.
Yes.
For publishers.
Yeah.
It's policy in my department to always go with the open access.
Yes. Yeah. It's also within the department's open access. You have to pay more, but that money is taken care by the departmental financial people. But and that's why the Dutch government is now trying to, buy the rights from the publishers, so that you don't have to pay these additional costs that you have to pay to make it open access. And there's a lot of bureaucracy happening behind the scenes, and unfortunately, people who are really interested to know what's happening in the article, you have to wait. Yeah, I think that's a good point, because if you find something that is interesting, reach out to the authors.
Never get
It's right.
This time you don't get
No.
I know it's, as publishing scientist, I know it's very special if somebody actually reads you.
Yeah. But thanks a lot for listening to me. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Let's jump now to the next session that we're presenting. Probably a good segue, folks, that we talk about open science and hardware.
And a small disclaimer, I have to leave at 12:30 unfortunately. Today is the last day before the holidays start, so a lot of last minute meetings.
Thank you for being able to
Yeah.
do this this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting.
I sent it, no?
Yeah, I'm not sure it already landed. That's strange.
Some time ago.
Yeah, it should be in my inbox right here.
I can resend.
Yeah, let's double check the email address.
What did I send it for? That's not. Oh.
We probably could like hot swap the HDMI cable too, if that's easier.
I mean, yeah. I have it here. So if it's the HDMI, sure. Can we do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Port.
Other side. There we go.
And this one goes like that. Uh-huh. I don't know what's going on. Well,
If it doesn't work, then plugging it out and putting it back in helps.
yeah, but it's prompting me to select.
It should work very easily and automatically, and this usually helps.
So what do I need to? Ah, okay. And I don't know why it's. Yeah, I mean, or we can use your computer if it's gonna. Because I don't know why there's no signal now. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
What is weird is that the
maybe
email.
Send it
Yeah.
again. Oh, there we go.
What?
It's a dash, not a dot.
No, I know, but
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
this is bothering me to write. Sorry, can.
Sure.
I sent it to you from my other email, so that's this one. What is the guest?
Tetem gast, yeah.
What is it?
Tetem gast.
Same?
Spelled identically, yeah.
Yeah, so this is not the address?
Where is the address again?
This one?
Well, that's my name, but I don't see the full email
Yeah, I'm
address.
not connected yet to Wi-Fi. No internet, for some reason.
Give it a second.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a nice summer.
This one?
Jan Martin at XS for all. There we go.
XS. Okay. All right.
There we go. That should work. go. And that looks promising.
At least there's a sign.
There we go.
Can I have the presenter mode?
The presenter mode?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. If you want to do...
Because I want my notes here.
Sure.
And that one. So now it's showing the notes. So I don't want to show the notes.
What I did before is I just downloaded the presentation.
Okay.
So I want to go out this mode. Just download the thing. There we go.
But I won't be able to see the notes on the side, right?
No, that you probably will not.
No.
I would not be able to help you.
Oh, okay.
Help you there.
I wanted to show the presenter mode so I can have my notes and show
I
the
get that,
screen.
yeah.
You did that?
No, I understand why you'd want to do that. Do you?
If you can do that from within the browser.
Why not? Could you bring your laptop up with speaker notes?
No, it doesn't work. For the speaker notes, yes. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Then we can do the downloaded version too, right?
No, I mean we can do that and that should
sure.
work.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to make it full screen here.
Oh, I don't forget to click on the...
Yeah. But I mean here, how do
Yeah,
you...
how do we make that bigger?
This is okay.
Oh, yeah. That's easy.
Oh, cool. Thanks, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Just kind of ironic, right? But still. So. All right, so hi everyone again, and as I mentioned before, my name is Julieta Arancio. I'm here and I wanted to share some of the ideas I've been working on in the last, I don't know, since 2017, many years. During my PhD, I started working with GOSH in Latin America, where I'm from Argentina. So studying some cases, trying to understand not only why people do open science hardware, but which kind of potential for science openness was in open hardware. And I'm a qualitative researcher, so I'm very interested in trying to really understand the point of view of research participants or practitioners or people who do open hardware, right? So in particular, I'm interested in people who do open hardware for science or for some kind of research. And this kind of led me into a more, I think, aligning to what is happening, to the trend. It kind of led also my trajectory towards more policy, science policy stuff, which I was not trying to get into at all. So yeah, exactly. And I think in this conversation today, it was very, very interesting to have people who are more from the hacking scene and people who are super institutional. So this tension, I think is productive, and I think we should pay attention to it. So I will stop talking about that, about me. And I wanted to just call attention because I understand that here in the Netherlands, there is quite a good situation with open science, and there's now this fund that the previous speaker was mentioning, so that's all good. But we are producing knowledge in context of crisis, everything is really on fire. So in a context where we need more science or we need more knowledge production that is localized, that is meaningful for the things we need to address. But at the same time, we have a lot of budget cuts, and we have a lot of threats in terms of, for example, trust, mistrust, lack of trust in science, and all these initiatives in open science that are trying to all the time get more actors and more diverse people into science. How do we make sure that we can, I allow it, yeah. There. How can we make sure that, and I put the AI one here because I think it's kind of difficult to ignore And my experience in the open hardware community is that we are kind of isolated from the world, and there's a lot happening, especially around uncertainty and how are we going, I think you mentioned data ethics, like how are we going to treat all this data? What are we going to do? Which are the values behind it? So my presentation is going to go more like broad and trying to think more about the ideas behind it, the technical stuff. So in this context, basically my question is, how do we make sure that we enable the science we need and want? So there is one proposal, right? It has been gaining a lot of traction. I'm sorry that he's gone, but as we see, like open science institutionalization is a thing, right? It's happening. There's money for open science. There are no new job role descriptions for open science. People make open science their career now, and it's interesting, like from a sociological point of view, because ideas of open science are not all the same, right? So some people have some visions of open science, which are more related to efficiency, data sharing, transparency, making science more by sharing data or by sharing software or whatever research products you have, by making it more efficient. And other people have an idea that is more towards fairness, openness, incorporating new participants. Some have both, and I included this image here because there is like a big milestone, the UNESCO 2021 recommendation on open science. Try to kind of get like a holistic thing and say, okay, what is open science? What do we understand for open science? It was a global consultation, and for the first time it included open hardware, which was quite interesting. Before that, open hardware was not in the map of open science. So you can see that open hardware had a lot of hacker ethics, it was interesting because people with very, very different philosophies were into open hardware. And it was, again, when you have such different people in the same community under the same banner, it's kind of confusing where the community is going. So it's interesting that now we have a common definition. And in this vision of open science, that in theory is a global vision, it's open science as a pathway towards better science. So open by default, open as fair, as he was mentioning, open as public participation, and a very global approach that recognizes that there is need for localization, right? So yes, it's very global, there is one understanding, but we actually need to contextualize open science, because if not, we are talking about nothing. Right? So I participated in the consultation, and I informed some of the open hardware things that UNESCO wrote on that toolkit and different products that UNESCO made. But still I have a lot of doubts and a lot of questions, like many people have on open science, particularly around the fair part. I think it's not a coincidence that now FAIR is an acronym for findable, accessible, reproducible, all the things we saw. FAIR is also a value, right? And a lot of people think that open science should be more fair science. Right now, if we go to this open science, the status quo of open science, or the institutionalization of open science, I have questions about who can ask research questions, about which research questions make it through scientific funding mechanisms, current science funding mechanism, who gets the money to do what science. How can we get novel science if peer review is demonstrated to be conservative? And again, like most of the time, I'm doing, by the way, a literature review on how peer review is not, in grant funding, is restricting novelty, because we are all getting more and more conservative as peer reviewers. So open science as we know it is better for sure than closed science, conventional science. Is it more fair or transformative? I doubt it. A lot of people, not me only, we doubt it. And what I want to propose here is to think of open hardware not as the one thing that will solve it, because I think that's one of the problems, right? That we think open science will solve it, and then we become blind to the grace. But as one alternative, this is the definition that was incorporated in the 2021 recommendation. I think we all know what open hardware is, but it's good to have it there. And I think this is, because this is emergent, this is newer, it comes from a different philosophy. It has more of a hacker ethics, but it also has a lot of, in Latin America, for example, it comes with a lot of philosophies about the commons and different ways of living, and it's much more than open science, open hardware, in many, many communities that are now under the banner of open hardware in science. Because we have that, that's an opportunity. That's a huge opportunity to start shifting this trend towards institutionalization to something a little more meaningful or more fair in other terms. So I think institutionalization is great. I think it's great that we are finally paid for doing open science and not living on a voluntary basis forever. That's great. But there is some trade-off. Right? There are some things that are more radical. GOSH, I would say, it's quite radical in its values, that you have to negotiate to start talking to university, so you start talking to technology transfer, and which license, and are we trying to sell this to a venture capital funding? How are we going to, you start negotiating openness. So this is a big opportunity. I feel there is much more stabilization in open data, open source software, open access. Open hardware still has a lot of people working in grassroots communities that have other values and that are interested in like a broader concept of open science. Sorry, I have to go between two computers, so it's a little confusing. Sorry about that. But for me, the biggest opportunity in open hardware is that you have I go back to your presentation and the picture of the 2 fab labs. I visited many fab labs. Many of them were empty all the time. And I visited other fab labs, and they were incredibly active and like alive. And I was wondering why. And when these fab labs that were alive, people came to talk to me, the interesting part were the dialogues. So you had there people doing open hardware or just learning about open hardware who were community scientists, people who were artists, researchers who did not have time to do this at their lab or didn't want to, just wanted to be with different people, and they went there. Teachers, lots of teachers. So this kind of diversity of backgrounds is really rich, and I don't particularly see it in other domains of open science, and this is why I think open hardware is a great opportunity to try to do something different. Very briefly, you probably know this, but a problem with scientific tools is that they're becoming super complex. I work with case studies, so I work with the Open Flexure microscope, which is a very nice open hardware project for science. And one of the uses was for one guy that is a medical doctor, and he's using this to, this is a whole slide imaging scanner. Basically, you put tissue and you get lots of pictures of the tissue. It's a microscope and a scanner, so you digitalize the images. This is super useful. This can help you diagnose disease. This is super expensive. Sometimes some of them occupy like this size. And they come with vendor agreements and service agreements and a lot of stuff. And these are some of the layers that you have in one of these, right? Because it's not only the hardware, it's the software that comes with it. And of course, there are layers of proprietariness in each of that. The problem, I mean, this is great that there is this capacity to do this stuff, but sometimes you need things that are much simpler. And it's really, really hard to get some functionalities. Like you cannot, reverse engineering this is a pain. Some people do it, some people in GOSH have done it, but it's not ideal, right? So this medical doctor found the Open Flexure project, and he combined this microscope with some basically means for recording the images that the microscope was generating, and voila, he had the feature he needed. For less than $500, and it's portable. They can take it anywhere. Like he works on global health. He goes around the world building microscopes like this. It's crazy when you think about it, okay? So the problem with scientific tools nowadays is not only that they are getting more complex, it's really hard to get your hands on scientific instrumentation if you are not at university. Like try calling a vendor. It's really hard. If they break down, good luck. You are, even if you're a researcher, you have very low capacity for negotiation because there's a vendor who's huge and you are one user. Procurement in general is a huge problem with open science hardware. So this is a big push for why people are making this stuff. The interesting part for me is that because they don't necessarily need all the functions, many go back to the start, and some of them reverse engineer, but some of them just take the availability of information that is online in very, very different formats and prototype some small thing they need. So this is kind of a pattern that I see everywhere, that they just isolate the features they need, take some processor, either Arduino or ESP32 or Raspberry Pi. I know Raspberry Pi is not open, but people use it anyway. They pair it with sensors. Some 3D printed enclosure is necessary. Well, we had examples from you today. People are doing this everywhere, like in many fields, and hopefully using open source software for visualizing or any other data processing. Many do it for fun also, so that's also interesting, for learning, for fun, for teaching, for having more powerful research, particularly in places where import restrictions make it really hard for you to put your hands on a piece of equipment. I just wanted to mention very quickly 3 projects that I think are great. The good thing about open hardware in science is that it's everywhere. It's in every field you can imagine. You can go to the Journal of Open Source Hardware, Journal of Open Hardware, or it's competition HardwareX. But HardwareX is Elsevier, your call. These are kind of, I would say, the ones that made it more through towards the product. From prototype to product, they are closer to the product, but still, if you go to OpenFS, they have a store, and they don't look amazing, right? It's not like there's a great UX there. There's not a team of engineers working on usability and that it looks nice. It's slowly getting there, but it's very slow. And I think it's important that it's slow, and we'll talk about that later. For those of you who are not into hardware, I think it's always interesting to try to understand what do people share when they share hardware. I like this OpenOmeter idea from Jeremy and Robert. I used to collaborate with OpenNext too, so I think what they do is great. I'm more on the qualitative side and grassroots community than the business side, but the business conversation is always there and it's always interesting. And the OpenOmeter is like a very visual way of looking at what things you have and what things you don't have. So translating material, of course, information into digital information is really complicated. And what is interesting is when I looked at projects and looked at documentation, basically you need to understand that documentation is an embedded practice, right? So whoever documents is going to document differently because of what they value, what they think it's important, the language they speak, of course, and whoever they think is reading them. So I, for example, had analysis of cases of people in Latin America who were documented in English, totally reasonable, and others who were documenting in Spanish because they were documenting for their own Fab Lab or Hack Lab. So why would they document in English, right? I think, though, that it's important because the field is kind of starting to move towards more standardization, and you need good practices for documentation, and there are some guidelines there. But still, I feel we need to think, who are we documenting for when we document? And that goes from, not of course what information you include, yes, but how you talk about it. There were some really good projects. I would say one of my conclusions from my research was, if you look at projects with great documentation, why? Right? Because documenting it takes a long time. No one wants to do it. Everyone hates it. In academia, most of the time, they leave it to the students to do it. Because there's some student who has time and poor things, they are kind of lost. So why are the good ones good? And what I found was that people who were using documentation as part of the process of co-design, well, documentation was great because they really needed documentation to be good. So a workshop where people were meeting and they were all working on an air quality monitor, for example, typical air quality monitor. Well, next Tuesday there's someone here who's going to use the documentation when you're not there. If you don't document well, nothing's going to happen. Then documentation became part of the process itself. By the end, documentation was amazing. It doesn't happen when most of the process happens offline between 2 or 3 people who work at the same lab, and then they publish a paper, hopefully, or they document 2 or 3 things that you need to have a lot of knowledge and skill to even understand what they documented. So they are documented for their research peers, for other scientists. So how open is that? It's open, but you need a lot of skill to understand it, to even access it. I think those are important differences. So again, as I was saying, documenting is so much work, no one wants to do it, and no one pays to do it. Absolutely no one pays to do it. It's not sexy. Funders pay you to develop tech. I'm lying. The Sloan Foundation is now paying for people to document as an experiment. We'll see how that works. And something also, because I thought, okay, maybe it's just community science that has great documentation because of this workshop dynamic, but no, OpenFlexure, for example, has great documentation, and that is because they had to collaborate with people at a makerspace. They are a very academic group of physicists in the UK. They had to collaborate with a makerspace in Tanzania. 2 different languages, 2 different worlds. That collaboration, which developed through 2 or 3 years and is still active, that generated awesome documentation, basically because they were translating between each other and they wanted to lay that common ground somewhere, and that somewhere was the documentation. So again, when documentation is part of the process, is much better. You probably know this. There are infinite options for documentation. I want to mention Git building because I think it's a great project. It's basically based on GitHub, or GitLab, sorry, and adapted to hardware. People use wikis, people use GitHub or GitLab, Thingiverse, like infinite options. And I think the elephant in the room when we talk about open hardware is how good its open hardware devices. I always get that question, like, yeah, but are they good? Like the devices, do they work? Or is it like an Arduino? I don't want to be connected to a ventilator running on an Arduino, I was told once. And I thought that was a good one, because I wouldn't be also, I don't know if I would do it, right? The thing about quality, I think is, I don't see a lot of people making this difference. You made it today. Most of the designs I see in open hardware today are prototypes. There are interesting projects that are moving towards the product, and there are interesting products, but it's not the mainstream. I don't think there is much support from universities towards this product stream yet. And for me, I think, and I know people like Robert think differently on this. Robert Mies is another researcher, very important one in open hardware, because a lot of people want more and more products, right? We want more open hardware that is usable, beautiful, efficient, and quality tested. I think that's fine. I think it's very important also that we keep having more and more prototypes, because prototypes are people's ideas just in the world. And I would love to understand if the trend that I'm observing, which is less activity in the prototyping stage, I would love that to not be true. So maybe we can discuss that during lunch. I think we should make it easier for people to prototype as much as they can. And then if we want to institutionalize, connect with business, that's great. But especially in science, again, a big advantage of open hardware is being an enabler of new ideas that have no space in academia normally. And if we kind of kill that, trying to discussions only about licensing or discussions only about business models, no, I think that's not the way. And this is a conversation I have with a lot of open hardware people I meet all the time. Do you see there's less activity in the field? Now that we have more institutionalization, we have more support, right? UNESCO is talking about open hardware and we see less open hardware. Why? That's something that I would love to discuss. So I'm going to finish with this because I know we are on time. I would love to ask the question, open hardware for what? I think it's an alternative to trying to make science, particularly in science, trying to make it more fair, trying to make it more open, trying to get novelty in there. I know funders are super interested in getting novelty. This is a discussion that I work part-time with science funders, so they are discussing this all the time. How do we get new ideas in? And I think open hardware is a way. But I think also that if we can try to, I'm very sorry he left, but if we can try to leverage these infrastructures that we have, community infrastructures that we have now, I saw like the map, it's full, like in the Netherlands, in Germany, there are also many. If we can try to make them a little more radical in a way, and not just make them a new bureaucracy for open, that would actually be very useful. On that line, on that note, I am aware of the TU Delft open hardware community. They are very active. I am sorry no one's here because I really think Jose, for example, who did the Open Hardware Academy, we had a similar project in the UK, and we're colleagues and friends. I think they're doing excellent work. So it would be great if that very, very academic community could kind of have input from more grassroots ideas and a little more radical ideas. That would be amazing. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you. And I'm here for questions or comments or criticism. Always welcome.
I would say because we're running a little bit behind on time, but any questions we can address at lunch. Might make a proposal to the group and get everyone's consent on this. It's 1 o'clock now. I feel like people are hungry. Yes, are people pretty hungry? Yeah. Why don't we do lunch now and then we can do the lab visit afterwards? Does that sound good for folks? We can get nods. Anyone disagree? Raise your hand. Cool. I think we need some food for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move, let's break, let's have lunch out in the cafe where we were before. And then we're probably going to actually end lunch a little closer to 12:45, 12:50. That's all right with folks, and we can make up some lost time. And yeah, bring your hardware, anything you want to show off. It will be kind of an interactive lunch where people can see the devices we're working on. So yeah, let's go. Any
Thank you, Bree. Whoa.
The lunch will be in this room where the tables are, and not in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's next to it, so you won't get lost. Oh, and the whole lunch is vegetarian for the people who said they want to vegetarian. You can have everything.